Hey there, welcome to our year-end edition of Cambridge Inside Out. My name's Robert Winters.
And I'm Judy Nathans.
And today's December
27th.
27th,
Did we have a year
2016.
end last year?
You know, I don't remember. I know that in the past, I have a recollection of doing sort of like some looking back, looking ahead type of things.
Of course, that was now last year. It was an election year,
Yeah, so you were looking
so we were kind of
back at a municipal
contemplating,
election.
but also
and-
we were in the midst of changes and
Yeah,
things,
yeah. So this is a year where the new city council began by being seated at the
Right.
beginning of the year, elected a mayor, and and that's been sort of going on even as the presidential election stuff
Yes.
has been going on.
Right.
No municipal election contests, but a little bit of municipal election posturing. I think
Back
it's fair
then.
to say. No, it's still ongoing.
Oh, you mean
Certainly.
now?
Even now,
Oh,
yeah.
because there's-
yeah.
oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, the clouds are assembling
Well, because David
for
Marr's seat's open.
2017.
And,
Yeah, we'll sort of see where that goes. We'll
Yeah.
maybe get to that
All
in a
right.
bit. But I thought what we could do is do a little bit of a trot through, not in a more or less chronological fashion.
In terms of Cambridge happenings.
Yeah, but mainly Cambridge happening, but pepper in some of the more spicy things that happened elsewhere, perhaps.
Yeah. It was
We'll
a
see.
bad year, folks.
Definitely was a bad
Lots
year.
of good people died.
Yeah, yeah.
The music died. Politics died.
Right, but certainly
Democracy died.
odd-numbered years in Cambridge begin with the inauguration of a new city council and a new school committee. I don't follow school committee as much anymore.
No,
I don't know that I ever really did.
Yeah,
So
you have to have kids in school usually.
so they inaugurated the new city council in January. I actually didn't
Yeah.
even write down the date, but relatively early January. I think the law specifies it has to be the first Monday, the first Monday
After the
after the year. Actually, it could actually happen on January 1st, potentially. I believe that happened one year.
I think it was on my birthday.
And that's actually
The
according to
hospital was on
state
the
law.
4th, Yeah.
So anyway, they began that, and there was one new face this year. Remember, Dennis Benzen had been defeated the previous year, and Jan Devereaux took over as the new city council.
Right.
And what has not been the typical thing to happen lately, they unanimously chose a mayor, Denise Simmons, this time.
Boy, refresh my memory. Did Minka run also? She did run.
She ran but was
She
defeated.
lost.
Yeah.
And Dennis Benzen
Dennis
lost a seat.
Benzen and Minka van Buzikum were kind of 9, 10, 11 in there. I think when
But
they
was
did
Minka serving on the council?
no, she
No,
was
this was-
seeking re-election.
That's right.
Again.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what confused me.
Right.
Right.
And she came close, but
Right.
no cigar, right? I mean, part of that was because of the slate dynamics. That
Right.
was something
And
relatively
Jan
new.
Devereaux was new and shiny face.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
The pretty new face, as
Yeah.
Clint Couture
Well, we
used
should
to
say pretty new face.
No,
but
it's
the
a-
shiny,
it's a-
new.
Pretty new
everyone
face
says
is a
it.
couturism. A pretty new face
Okay.
could be a
Or
fellow.
shiny new toy.
Could be an old man,
Yeah.
actually, but
Right.
if it was
Anything,
a new,
it's
attractive,
new and
interesting new
shiny,
candidate.
right.
New and shiny.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we had one new councillor, and it was sort of a nice way to open up with a
Yeah.
unanimous, agreement
Yeah, about the
on
mayor.
who would be
Yeah.
the mayor. I mean, there had been some angling about who wanted it, but ultimately the cards were pretty much going
Yeah.
that way anyway.
And had Denise been mayor before?
She was mayor once before,
That's right.
yeah, and not that long ago.
And yeah, that's what I seem to remember.
Yeah, just that
Before
David Marr.
David Marr.
Yeah, and then so David Marr, I think it was David Marr has been mayor twice in relatively short
Yes.
succession. Denise Simmons also in
Right.
relatively short succession. I mean, yeah, the truth is that the selection of a mayor sometimes rides on who's seen as agreeable to all, or at least to most. And so,
And didn't you say something last about who has garnered votes from scattered around the city can determine, and she had the most wide appeal
I
in
think
terms of voting.
Yeah, I think if you actually, I think
You did
Nadine
something.
Mazin actually had the most number one votes, but if you actually had done
Right.
a mock-up of a instant
Right,
runoff,
like where are they coming
where
from?
you just go from
Yeah.
all the candidates down to 9 to 8 to 7,
Yeah.
all the way in one person left
Right.
standing, it was very much Denise Simmons who ended
Right.
up as the one with the strongest citywide
Right.
deep
Which
depth
to
of
me,
appeal.
that makes you mayor.
I would think that
Yeah, it's a
that's
good way to
if you
look at
if
it.
you wanted just sort of a down and dirty cheap way to elect a mayor by the public using existing ballots, that would certainly work.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
a way that's doing it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. So anyway, that was
So
in
that was that,
January,
yeah.
and it's funny because it's almost, I'm so accustomed to having Mayor Simmons now that it seems like it was, oh, she's been mayor for years, but actually she's been mayor for 11 months.
Yeah, well, we have such short terms.
We have short
Yeah.
terms, and mayors, they establish themselves, and and then they move on, but they do establish
Right.
themselves. So just looking somewhat randomly back
Yeah.
at other things that were sort of major topics of the day.
Yeah.
One of the things that I remember, which kind of carried over through the rest of the year, but also carried from the previous year, was there was these rash of these open meeting law campaign
Right, you wrote a lot about that.
complaints. There was the Courtney Dietrich ones, the Elon Levy ones, John Hawkinson, Hussein Radid, and even others, right?
Can you explain to the audience what exactly that means?
I mean, the open meeting law basically has certain specific requirements about public meetings. You have to hold, have to have accurate record of minutes of meetings.
Which many people don't do.
There's certain things like you can't have more than a certain number of you can't have a majority certainly of city councilors meeting privately
Right.
and talking about public business. That would be a very glaring
Isn't
violation.
that called executive committee?
The only exception is you go into executive session, but you can't just do that for the heck of it. You do
I
that when
see.
there's personnel matters or
I
pending
see.
lawsuits, things
So
like
it's
that.
specific, okay.
So I think it's been established. I mean, there was some merit in one or two open meeting complaints, but none of them prevailed.
Right.
Basically said, well, you've got a point here, but sorry, lots of luck.
It is
See ya.
the legal, it's
Most-
a legal opinion, is that, it's
It
not up to the
goes
city
to the
council?
district attorney, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's right. Anyway,
Yeah,
none of them really prevailed. They
Mm-hmm.
were probably could be characterized more as sort of harassment than anything
Mm-hmm.
real. But it was one of those things. It was an issue, and
Yeah.
there was a time when city councilors were very afraid to even talk to each other, like two of them having
right,
a
'cause
conversation.
that's right, because it would be considered
we
not,
actually had an issue when we were the recycling
Yeah.
advisory committee where there
Yeah.
was
yeah.
at least one interpretation that we couldn't
Yeah.
talk about recycling outside of a meeting.
Well,
I think, wait a minute.
well, Randy got very into being very strict with the rules and minutes and not having, if you had a phone thing, you
Yeah.
couldn't have a phone thing, and yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
there are all
anyway,
kinds of
it
laws.
seems like it's
Yeah.
kind of settled out a bit,
That's good.
thankfully. One other thing that was kind of an interesting moment, I believe it was in January, it was from the previous year, there was Patrick Barrett's, the Barrett
Oh,
petition
right,
about
that got brought over.
auxiliary housing units, basement units
Mm-hmm. Right.
and whatnot. That passed, I think it was something like 7-2 vote in January. From my point of view, kind of unexpectedly, it happened.
Yeah.
It had plenty of time to go before expiration, and boom, it passed.
Hmm.
So that was how we kind of rang in the new year.
Yeah.
Was with a little bit of
Yeah.
zeal that way. Other things as the year carried on, or I guess we get into sort of February, March. In March, actually, was when, it's funny, we're used to now the plastic bag ban that
Yeah.
was pursuant to a city council initiative and an ordinance.
Yeah,
And that actually went into effect, and I think it's pretty fair to say most
Yeah.
people are
compliant.
accustomed to
Yeah,
it. I
Makes
noticed
sense,
that at the
yeah.
micro center the other day, they have
Yeah.
they have bags sort of at the ready there. But with the guy at the checkout, he says, "I don't understand. These people here, they got Cambridge addresses, and don't they know about the bag ban?"
yeah.
So anyway, it seems to have settled in. And
The people
Boston-
associate it with groceries, they don't associate it with going into Micro Center.
Yeah, I know. I've
you know.
actually, I wondered when you go to a place, if somebody comes from out of town and goes to go
Yeah.
buy stuff at the Galleria Mall,
Yeah.
they're probably expecting that you get their stuff put in a bag, right?
Yeah, well,
They
you
say-
can, you just pay 10 cents.
Yeah, and that's kind of what has happened.
Yeah.
And so at Micro
Right.
Center, there's a lot of dimes being collected
Yes,
for that. Another thing that happened, I think it was in March into April, there was as part of the previous, from 2 years earlier, when this whole citywide master plan process had kicked off, and it eventually
right.
got rebranded as Envision Cambridge.
Right,
And again, arguably took a long time in its creation, but eventually came to be. And the consultant who had been hired, I think, late in the previous year, And the city staff were holding a series of workshops to sort of get the
Right.
ball rolling on Envision Cambridge.
Yeah, I went to one.
Yeah, I went to one,
went
and
to one.
there were various ones in, little
Right.
ones in street corners and whatever as
Mhm.
well. So, anyway, that eventually culminated in the appointment of the Envision Cambridge Advisory Committee, which I'm on, and
Right.
some working committees that are specific to alewife and other matters. So,
Mhm.
and that's a process that's very much continuing. So, in the spirit of looking back and looking
Yeah.
ahead, that's something that really
Yeah.
kind of got underway this
Yeah.
year for real. And all indications, being on the advisory committee,
Yeah.
is that it'll sort of get a lot more real next year.
Okay.
There's a lot of sort of background work and research
I've
people.
since learned that, I guess, Boston has a similar, it's not called that, but they have something with the word vision in it. They're doing
Yeah.
something similar.
Yeah, and
some
Somerville
other
did
cities
their
too. Yeah.
I forget the name, but it had some catchy little
Yeah, so I guess
summer
it's
plan
something
or
that
something.
a lot of communities are doing.
Yeah, it's true. And there's actually some wording in state law that some towns which don't have planning departments like we do,
Right, that's true.
are actually obliged to have these things in
Wow.
place, plans in place.
Hmm.
We're not quite in the same
Yeah.
obligatory category.
Huh.
But anyway, that was some,
that's
that's
going on.
that's looking back past, and it's also looking ahead. It'll definitely be on the plate. I hope that my personal hope is people shouldn't have their expectations raised so high that
Yeah.
they end up being disappointed at anything that comes out of it.
Right.
But there will be some creative juices, I think, associated with it by the
Okay.
time we get well into 2017. Now, was it in March? We had one of the most delightful little adventures, which was
The basketball.
the Cambridge Trinity Lights. It's not political, but this is part of Cambridge. It was a
Yeah.
pretty exciting moment.
Yeah, a run to the state championship.
Right.
Yeah, because I went to every
Maybe
one of those
let's
games.
scroll up one.
Yeah.
We'll throw one image up
Yes,
here
one
for this
image.
one here. There were many images about
Yeah.
this, and I think we do this
I
way.
like this
and
one
we'll
because
go
my
like
daughter
that.
took it, yeah.
Well, that's right, yeah. But
Yeah.
but Sammy put together
Yeah.
quite a few wonderful
Yeah. I mean, there were other
photos.
official photography, but she did a lot and she gave them to the team, but
Yeah,
yeah, they
and
were great.
in many respects, it was a period it was a relatively short period where there was like a
It was in
semifinals
March
and
and then
a
April
finals
6th,
and
yeah.
then a state
Yeah, just
championship
like,
and when
yeah.
bang bang bang,
Yeah,
and it was really the talk of the town.
it was.
It was good.
It
was great.
It just was great. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a great feeling, and they're doing very well this year, folks. So check out their schedule. I'm going to try to get to a game before it gets to that point.
Yeah, actually, I think I'd like to
Yeah.
get to a game
Yeah,
too.
especially if they play on
Yeah.
the street, right?
So it's not all Sullivan Chamber and
No,
politics.
right, you gotta have something
Cambridge is
else in
still a
there.
town just like any other
Now,
town.
also in March, the announcement, you're going to say it by Richard Rossi.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Right,
You know,
yeah.
actually, and that was a huge,
Yeah.
probably the biggest political matter.
Right, because
or civic matter of the entire year was
place
I was fully expecting Richie Rossi, the then city manager, to go for another 1 or 2 year contract extension. He actually gave me a phone call before the announcement and said, "I just want to let you know I'm going to be making an announcement and I'm not seeking this."
Wow.
It was a very nice conversation. And then he made a big announcement at a government operations committee meeting where, and actually quite a few of the people who had come to that meeting were there ready to start protesting,
we
the
don't
old
want it.
guard
Oh, right,
and
that's
whatever.
right. Is that right?
And it kind of took them by surprise.
Sure. Oh, you
Yeah.
can't punch me around.
But
Right.
Richie worked for
Yeah.
the city for a long,
Yeah.
long
He was the
time.
assistant city manager.
And then he subsequently, even though his contract would expire in end of June, he then agreed to continue as city manager
Until they found it's September.
until the end of September, right? And it was quite a process.
Yeah.
I went to many or most of the
the forums they had. Yeah.
the forums as well as the government operations committee meetings where they were, just designing a process.
Right, I
David
went to-
Marr was
Right.
chair of government
Right.
operations, and I think it's pretty fair to say with this big matter kind of before them, his choice as chair of the government operations committee was definitely made with this in mind, that they
Yes.
wanted a good steady hand at the helm.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think, in retrospect, and
Yeah.
certainly at the time, I think he did a hell of a great job,
He did.
actually. And I heard no complaints afterwards, I think, but anyway, that culminated in late September, I believe, right? We had, I forget exactly
September 30th?
how many applicants
Oh,
total.
oh,
They
right.
winnowed the field down.
Yes. Yeah.
Eventually settled down to 3 candidates.
Yes.
Jay Ash,
Right.
Paul Featherston, and
good for you.
the internal candidate, which was
Louis
city's
D. Pasquale.
head of the finance department and budget director at the time, Louis D. Pasquale. And as one person divulged to me, I think he wasn't supposed to say, he said, when they were interviewing all the candidates, Louis really hit it out of the park.
Oh, yeah.
He apparently impressed everybody so much.
Well, he had the most inside knowledge of anybody
Yeah.
there. I mean,
He did, and this.
He was a true insider, but an insider that had physicals, which I think is really important.
And I think it's fair to say
Yeah.
Louis, by the time he was
Yeah.
chosen, and the remarks that the city councilors made in late September, September 29th, I believe was the night of the vote,
Yeah.
even the ones who were inclined to vote for another candidate had very, very nice
Yeah.
things to say. And
Yeah.
so in the end, it was
Well, Jay
unanimous
Ashton
vote.
dropped out before that too.
When the
Yeah,
handwriting
2
was
days
on the wall,
yeah, right.
that in fact the votes were really going to
Right.
be there for Louis.
Yeah.
So it really came down to two candidates, and
Yeah.
it was pretty much a
Yeah.
done deal. But that was a big thing. There were several major retirements beyond
Right.
the city manager.
Susan
Susan Flannery had
Library.
been head of the library for a good long time.
Right. And then fire or police, somebody.
Actually, Jerry Reardon is the fire chief. He will retire, I believe, this coming
Oh, okay.
spring. But
was he
Robert
doing?
Haas, the
That's what
police
they-
commissioner,
right,
who was just the best.
How long was he in that
I
position?
forget. It's funny. The years pass, and
Yeah.
you sort of lose track a little bit. But he really, really established himself as the standard you want to maintain for police commissioner. Then he was replaced just as temporary with Commissioner Burke.
So when
but
you say
that's-
temporary, so who decides that position?
It's actually was a decision it's the city manager makes
Oh,
the
so
decision.
city manager does that.
Yeah, and Richie chose to appoint somebody as an interim police commissioner
Oh, this
from
one
the
he was
ranks,
still city manager.
and
Okay.
chose to leave the final decision to his
His successor.
the real successor.
I see.
The one
Right.
who was going to stick around, because it's such an important
Right.
choice.
So it may not be Burke.
Might not be, yeah. So, but we'll see. That's one. It's funny. I haven't heard any talk about it, but
So when you say the
ultimately-
city manager picks, so is it just an internal
You know,
process? It's not.
The police commissioner is really just like a department head, and the city manager is the appointing authority. Appoints the heads of all the city departments, except for the school department.
Except for
And
the school department.
yeah, he is the appointing authority.
And except for the city council, obviously.
The city council doesn't appoint.
No, but he does, they don't, right.
Actually, the
That's
city
elected.
council does make three
The city
really three
manager-
appointments: the city manager, the city auditor, and the city clerk. All three were appointed this year.
Huh.
Donna Lopez was reappointed as city clerk. Jim Monagle, who I was chatting with today, was reappointed as city auditor. And Louis Di Pasquale was chosen as city manager. So all three.
But that was a process versus the city clerk, there's not other candidates, are there?
The city council could do a process.
I see, but they reappointed those particular,
Yeah,
okay.
they could. I mean, city clerk is a
Yeah.
very important position, but the thing is
Yeah.
that, Donna Lopez was in there when Joe Connerton was not reappointed and Margaret Drury followed.
Oh, I remember.
Donna was actually there back then, sort of training the new
I
people. So she's been a steady hand at the tiller
Yeah.
for as long as people
That's a
can
hard
remember.
job, boy. Oof.
It's a pretty important
You have to-
function for the
you have to
city,
really
actually.
keep notes, or whatever.
Well, that's
Yeah.
historically there was actually a position called clerk of committees,
Oh,
and the city clerk. But in the government system that we established, the city clerk not only serves as the sort of the person who provides the staff for city council
Yeah.
committees, but also maintains all the public records. So conducts weddings. I
Oh.
saw the wedding taking place
She
today in
conducts
City
weddings,
Hall.
too.
Yeah. They'll just raise your hand, repeat after me. No, that's not how weddings happen, right? Anyway, so there were a lot of appointments and few retirements, like Susan Flannery and whatever, who's now been replaced by Maria. I'm forgetting her
don't know
name,
her name.
but it's
No,
actually
no.
I have it in here somewhere. So those are some of the things that were happening this year.
And the recycling. Actually, she left in January, Randy Mail.
Randy Mail was the recycling director.
And then they kept that open actually until Michael Orr.
And then Michael Orr
is now-
eventually became, officially made
Right.
recycling director. One thing that I think is fair to say was a big topic that came back in many forums this year. There were city council orders that were trying to change the way we do elections. I don't mean changing proportional representation.
Is who can vote.
Yeah, so there was one home rule petition to actually give voting rights in municipal elections to non-citizens.
Right.
That was actually forwarded to the State House at the end of the year. I don't know where, I think it probably won't go anywhere, but we'll see. There were also, there was a move to institute municipal lobbying regulations.
Oh, yeah,
This
that
is,
didn't.
in the previous election, there was, in 2015, that was sort of a topic. Like there was a lot of accusation that some council or candidates were receiving big donations from property developers or whatever, and somehow that was unclean money and whatever. So there were some individuals, and at least one city councilor, who were very much pushing for regulations on that. All right. So anyway, that's one. That's lobbying, which is a little bit different in campaign contributions. There was, it's funny, it's been forgotten now, but there was actually an order back then, early in the year, on the feasibility of facilitating the appointment of a non-citizen representative to the city council.
Oh.
It's funny because now they want to just give non-citizens the right to vote, but back then they wanted to have sort of, and that was a non-starter. I didn't know where that was going to go. All right, so that was going to happen. Now, by the time we got in a little closer to springtime, one of the rites of spring is the arrival of the big city budget. And this year there was a 5.4% increase in the budget over the previous year.
Yeah, I was interested there. I mean, you could show, I mean, you did a very nice breakdown.
Yeah,
here.
just to sort of show some of these sort of the numbers in here. What I do just to kind of show people the short-term and long-term perspective is what's the 1 year change, what's the 2 year change, and then just for comparison, I put in a 12-year change. And
it's like people's brokerage statements.
Yeah,
you see performance over
the city's budget actually grew like 60 some odd percent over 12 years. So it's kind of on the 5% per year on average.
Yeah.
Some of that was paid for with new development, or as opposed to increasing property taxes for existing properties. There were some departments that grew considerably more. Like
I see very few that lost anything. That's what's interested me. They all seem to gain, except
some
general
more than
services. I don't know
others.
what that means, but that's the only one. But but basically every year, like nobody was denied. It might have been small. But
I think the city council budget is actually one of the biggest growing budgets, maybe the largest growing budget of all.
In the state?
Yeah, on average for over 12 years, it was about 60 some odd percent. City council budget grew about 93%.
Oh, the city council, but now what does that mean?
Just means the total budget. It covers.
That means because they were getting more money.
Covers salary, benefits, but it also includes aids.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the aides, I think, were originally, well, they've grown into full-time.
It's crazy.
It was never proposed as full-time, but then it eventually became a full-time
I didn't think city
job.
councilors were supposed to be full-time.
A full-time, highly politicized job.
Yeah.
Some of the aides right now are actually pretty decent and neutral.
I know, but I'm just saying, even the city councilors weren't supposed to be full-time, were they?
No, honestly, the
Aren't they
charter.
The best paid in like the country or something?
The charter never anticipated the Cambridge City Council position to be a full-time position, and I get into it with people about this all the time. But I think
we seem to let it go. So.
But it does. It actually. We would be better if it was recognized as more of a part-time position, and people sort of cycled in and cycled off. And, but that's what I have to say. So. There was a lot of.
What else?
There was they actually kicked off. They knocked down the old Harrington School, which is, I guess, the King Open.
That must have been the beginning, though, of the year.
Well, no, it happened a little later. They put aside the funds for a lot of money, actually, for the King Open Cambridge Street schools. So it's one of the middle schools, as well the upper schools. About $150 million in loan orders set aside for that. So that was kind of a big deal. A few things. One other thing that I think was a very common issue throughout the year was this one after another Well, that certainly,
Oh.
but medical marijuana dispensary zoning petitions, right?
And we still don't have one.
We still
Right.
don't have one actually
Dispensary
cited.
anyway.
I think some of the zoning
When did
petitions
that
have all
law get
passed.
passed? 2 years ago?
Something
3
like
years
that,
ago?
yeah.
Crazy.
And now they've passed recreational marijuana, so we're gonna see, everything's gonna get just rehashed again.
You know,
But it's fair to say that was a big thing over the year,
Yeah.
over the course of the year. Certainly not the only thing, but
Right.
definitely a big thing. One other big thing, and I'm just, again, not in any particular order here, is that when the Green Line extension ran into financial troubles and,
Right.
cost overruns, the state basically said, well, if we can get some money generated from some of the cities and towns,
right,
and Cambridge, Somerville, Medford all stepped up to the plate. I think 25 million from Cambridge. Some of it will be paid by local
Right.
developers, so it's not
Right.
like just all being wrenched
Right.
out of city funds.
right.
50 million from Somerville and some
Oh.
money also from Medford.
So where is that at now?
The money's right there, but until the Green Line extension actually gets fully
Isn't it something
ready to roll.
federally, we have to do something on the federal level they have to do?
They have to do some
okay this?
approvals, yeah,
Yeah.
so the thing is, so there'll be a little extra money to do it, but even in some of the local political campaigns for state rep and state senate, this was definitely an issue, is where do you
Yeah.
stand on the Green Line extension
Yeah.
and the funding for that, so that was a kind of a big
Let's hope
thing
the
here.
next administration doesn't look unkindly on it, but
Yeah, right.
it's
Well, I think it's a
one
big
of their
thing, actually.
favorites,
And
Massachusetts.
just in our last little minute for
Yeah.
the first half hour here, I'd just say that, something I think people need to be concerned about as we go into the next year with a new president, sorry to say, that threat about sanctuary cities losing funding,
Oh, we should talk about that. in a
Cambridge,
second, yeah.
Somerville, yeah, we will, but Cambridge, Somerville, these are sanctuary cities. Does that meanness about sanctuary city designations carry over to potential loss of funding for
Right.
federal
Right,
subsidies for transportation projects? I don't know.
or anything.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, right.
We don't know. We'll have to see how
Right.
this plays out. Somehow I don't think it'll play out like the greatest fears, but
Yeah,
bad things may very well happen. So
we don't know, we're in uncharted territory.
this is true. Anyway, we're down to the last
Yeah.
few seconds here, so we'll see you in a few minutes on Cambridge Inside Out.